The early inhabitants of the primeval swamps have left their bones behind them. Air-gulping fish were the first of these creatures to struggle from pond to pond across the mud. In time, fins became limbs, gills became lungs, fish became amphibians. Amphibians gave rise to reptiles. And some of the reptiles, 300 million years ago, arrived at one of natural history's great parting of the ways. One group rose up on powerful hind legs and strode out to dominate the land. Meanwhile, another reptile had taken a different route. Cold blood became warm blood. Scales became fur. And as the dinosaurs grew ever more gigantic, the mammals became small and inconspicuous. Yet the mammals survived, spreading across Gondwana and into Australia. Beneath the dinosaurs' feet, the land itself was shifting still. It was a Cretaceous paradise. Here, for example, is Allosaurus, as tender a mother as you could hope to meet. But meeting Allosaurus was probably the last thing the plant-eating dinosaurs hoped to do. And this is Tamimus, with the long neck and legs of an ostrich or an emu, and a goanna's appetite. There are low-risk meals, and there are high-risk meals. Eating baby Allosaurus would have been one of the highest risks in all Gondwana. Australia's inhabitants were almost cut off from the rest of Gondwana. Already, this was becoming a land apart. In the cool rivers, labyrinthodont amphibians flourished. They died out elsewhere 30 million years earlier. Australia's mammals were even more unusual. One of the earliest known was Steropodon, an ancient relative of the platypus and the echidna. Like its reptile ancestors and its monotreme descendants, it lay eggs. Once hatched, its young would feed on mother's milk like other mammals, and then untrumpeted their last. Australia's sparse fossil record has preserved no trace of this catastrophic epoch. Even the rich fossil beds of North America can't tell us for certain whether the extinctions were a gradual process or a single cataclysmic event. For 140 million years, the dinosaurs had walked the earth. Their doom spelled opportunity for the humble mammals. They'd survived almost unnoticed beneath the dinosaurs' feet. Now they were set to follow in the giants' footsteps and to dominate the planet in their turn. The marsupials of Gondwana were scattered by this continental carve-up. In South America, they would have to compete with invaders from the north. Those animals stranded in Antarctica suffered a grimmer fate. In clearings in the rainforest, the sheep-sized Napacaldia grazed and courted. Its descendants would include some of the largest marsupials that ever lived. In the canopy above, primitive possums and cuscus clambered. Ancestral potoroos and bandicoots scurried across the forest floor. And in the green cradle of Australia's forests, marsupials diversified and flourished. But hard times lay ahead. Ice ages gripped the polar regions. Less water fell as rain elsewhere. The old world was disappearing. A new kind of forest, drier and more open, began to replace the rainforest. And as their habitat changed, the marsupials adapted too. One of Napacaldia's descendants was this hulking browser, Palacestes. Its size enabled it to reach high up the tree trunks and made it more than a match for the pouched predator of the woodlands, the thylacine. But even Palakestes was dwarfed by Procoptodon. It was a short-faced kangaroo with an appetite for leaves. A very big appetite indeed. It stood 3 meters tall and weighed more than twice as much as a man. The polar ice sheets expanded. Australia's forests dried and died. Here, at the edge of the spreading deserts, herds of Diprotodon grazed the saltbush. These rhino-sized animals were the heaviest marsupials there had ever been. Thylacoleo, the so-called marsupial lion, was actually no larger than a leopard, too small to tackle an adult Diprotodon. But woe betide the youngster who failed to keep up with the herd. Because Thylacoleo, the largest carnivore of arid Australia, was not a mammal. Megalania would have dwarfed its modern cousins, the goannas of Australia and the dragons of Komodo. It grew to a monstrous 7 meters in length. It was capable of sudden bursts of speed and could have overpowered the largest Diprotodon. But why waste precious energy to catch your own meal, when by sheer intimidation you can steal someone else's? Less than 100,000 years ago, Australia was still a land of giants. Huge flightless birds browsed like feathered giraffes on the higher branches. There were reptilian herbivores as well. The horned tortoise cropped the tough scrub of the Australian bush. It was well protected, but its most effective defense was its ability to retaliate. Australia's isolation had long since ended. The narrow seas with ease. Then the first land rodent made the crossing. Tough and resilient, the newcomer made itself at home. Droughts became frequent. Whether it was fire and climate change or the spears of the new invaders that caused the extinction of Australia's largest herbivores, we still don't know. The survivors were the small, the wary, and the swift. With so much of their prey gone, the large predators went too, until only the thylacine was left. 4,500 years ago, it too disappeared from mainland Australia, driven out by the dingo. It survived in isolated Tasmania. With hard-hoofed animals and axes, the Europeans tried to reshape the new land to resemble the one they'd left. The entire history of humankind has occupied no longer than a heartbeat. And species yet unborn will disembark from the Australian arc at the long journey's end.